Hey guys, this is Aldo with Dark Science Reptiles, and today I'm just going to let it all out. I'm going to tell you all the mistakes I made in breeding ball pythons. Stay tuned. Before we get going though, do me a favor and subscribe and leave a comment. I love hearing your comments. If you are a subscriber, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for watching. So let's get going. Mistakes. Mistakes are made. Mistakes happen. That's how you learn. Hopefully you learn from your mistakes. Ball python breeding, keeping, there's no exception to mistakes. I've made a ton of mistakes over the years. So the purpose of this video is for you guys to, if you're new, if you're thinking about getting into ball pythons, it's to let you know kind of the mistakes I made. Now, these are my mistakes. I'm not saying everyone's going to make these mistakes, although from what I heard, a lot of the mistakes that I made, other people made too. Just know that it happens, and you're not a bad person, and you're not horrible, and all that stuff. It just happens. You just make sure you learn from them, and you don't do the same mistakes over again. First mistake that I made breeding ball pythons, getting into ball pythons, is I ended up with too many males. I did. I was going into it. I was like, oh, I'm going to pick this male. I was like, oh, look at this pretty thing over here. I'm going to get it. Oh, look at this one over here. This one's really awesome. I'm going to buy that snake and I'm going to breed it. I don't know what it is, and it looks cool. You get the point. And you're excited. It's, you know, you're getting into all that. You just discovered ball pythons. They're so amazing. I mean, they are. And there's so many pretty colors, and you want all the colors. You want everything. You want this, this, and that, and that. And you're like, I don't care if it's a female and a male. I'm going to get it. I'm going to build my collection. I'm going to breed them all together. And that's a big no-no, guys. Really, that's a big no-no. There's two reasons for that. The first reason is something I did is I obviously did all that and got all the pretty colors. But then I realized, shoot, you can't breed ball pythons if all you have is males. I don't know if you guys have had that conversation with your parents, but like, to make babies, you need to have a female and a male. And so I didn't really think about that. I had all these males, and I probably had like 2 females, and the 2 females weren't even old enough to breed yet. So be careful. Start with females. Really, if you're gonna get into ball python breeding, start with females, especially if you're getting babies, because a baby female ball python will take 2.5 to 3 years to get to the age where you're gonna breed her. A male can get to that age where it can breed in the first year. So, you know, you can do the math, figure out that you won't be able to breed those together in a year. You're going to have to wait for 3 years, and then you got this male, you know, just kind of chilling. Let's say you already started going, and you're like, oh shoot, Aldo, you're right. I just started going. I got like 3 males or 2 males, and they're almost breeding size. Shoot, I screwed up. I want to get rid of the males. You don't have to. The other thing you can do is actually buy a breeder-ready female. Now, expect to pay a little bit more for a ready-to-breed female, because they're just more expensive because everyone wants them. If you're okay with that, then go that route. If not, if you want to pay a little bit less, but then you have to wait a little bit more, get a baby female and grow it out, and then get the male. I would say get the male after 1.5 years to 2 years after that, and they should be ready to go. The other issue with doing that too is that once you start sitting down and writing down your plans for breeding as far as what genes you want to work with, you'll realize that you have all these genes that you don't really have time to work with. You're kind of all over the place. Does that make any sense? So that's kind of where I was too. I had genes over here, genes over here, genes over here. There are genes everywhere, and I didn't know what to do with them because I had an idea, but then I'm like, oh well, now I don't need this guy here, and I don't need this guy here. I only need these 2, so what am I going to do with these guys? So it's just a big mess. So I ended up like that. So actually what I had to do was sell off a lot of the stuff, really cool stuff, but I just didn't want to work with it anymore, or didn't realize that I didn't want to. If you need to sit down and write it, or write it on a board, I had a whiteboard that I wrote stuff on, what I wanted to do, and then figure out, can I do something with those genes? What do they look like when they put them together? Because I might not even like it, so where am I going to work with it? So, you know, do all that stuff, and then start buying for your projects, you know. So I think that's the best way to do it, and that's what I do now, and it saves me a lot of trouble, saves me a lot of money. Because I mean, I still look at things online and be like, oh, I need that, and but then the other side of my head is like, no, look at the board. The board says you don't need it. If you want to stick to your guns, if you want to stick to your plan, then don't get that snake. That doesn't mean that sometimes I'll be like, oh, this was not on my plan, but now it is on my plan, and I'm going to work with it, and that's, you know, that's completely normal too. Another mistake I made was I did not account for snakes getting sick. So Please account for your snakes getting sick. Obviously, like you yourself, you should account for you getting sick, so you should get insurance. You're buying all these snakes, and then you realize when they get sick, oh shoot, I didn't account for money for that snake. And a trip to the vet costs you anywhere from $200, $500 just for, you know, checkup and whatever they have. Now if they have something more serious like an RI, that gets more expensive, you know, you gotta buy medicine and stuff like that. So please make sure that when you're getting into snakes that you just account, you know, put some money aside, or just assume that you're gonna spend some money on that snake at some point. I've had to do it, and you know, I had to put it on a credit card, which is not something I like to do. It's better to know up front and maybe put some money aside. I would say a few $100s for each snake just to get a checkup at least. If you know, if they're acting weird or whatever, you need to take them to the vet, or some accident. You know, accidents do happen. So yeah, I didn't account for that, so that was a big mistake for me. I do have now money aside for snakes, especially when you get to the size of my collection. I mean, if I have an issue that can spread to other snakes, that's a big spend on my part to get rid of whatever it is. So there's that. Another big mistake I did is just getting snakes from anyone. And I don't want to put people down or anything, but I ran into a lot of issues when I was getting snakes. I was kind of going for the cheapest out there, you know, because I was starting out, and I'm like, oh, this guy has a snake for $50. That's a steal. Well, sometimes there's a reason why a snake is $50 compared to the same snake being $100. You know, just as an example. And I came across that. For example, going back to the being sick thing, I bought 6 snakes. I didn't know they were sick. That's why they were a good deal. And I've had snakes die after I bought them, you know, because they were sick, and I didn't realize that. So, you know, I lose money there. Sometimes people just don't know a lot about the snakes, so then you end up with a snake that you might not be 100% sure if it's a female or a male, and I didn't know how to actually sex snakes back then, so I couldn't just do it. So I bought some snakes that ended up not being what they were supposed to be. So that kind of screws everything up. If you're going to get into hets, you know, if it's a pied, you know it's a pied because it looks like a pied, but if it's a het pied, then it doesn't look like a pied. So buying something like that, and then years later realizing, oh, this is not what it's supposed to be. So just be careful. One thing I recommend for that is stick to breeders that you know, that you worked with before, that you trust. You know, and that's kind of when, and not always, probably gonna get in trouble for this, but not always, but most of the time the bigger breeders, the ones you trust, are good to go. That's not the case all the time. There's big breeders that don't do things right either. So I'm a small breeder, so sometimes small breeders, I mean, you can trust me, guys, come on, I have a trustable face. So I won't sell anything that's not what's supposed to be, and if I don't know what it is, I'll let you know that too. Just do your research, ask people. It's the best way to do it. Another mistake I made is not knowing my limitations, and not just my limitations personally with time and other things I wanted to do, but also my limitations with the room. So before I had this nice big room, I was in an apartment. It was really tiny. I didn't have a snake room. I had this little corner, and when I was starting out and I was getting all those pretty snakes, remember those, and all the jeans I was getting and stuff like that, so I ran out of room, and so I was like, snakes everywhere, and it was kind of like disorganized, and it was just a big mess. And it got to the point where I had too many snakes for the room I had, and don't tell anyone, but I wasn't supposed to have snakes in that apartment. So that was a pain too, trying to hide the snakes when they were having apartment checkups and stuff. Anyway, I just, if you can get away without doing that, please don't. Know your limitations. Room. Do you have enough room for the snakes? Do you have enough time for the snakes? I got kind of caught up on all that, and I ended up with, you know, times where I might not been cleaning as much as I needed to, and it was really upsetting me. And so that's the whole dark time where I started, and I messed up and had to restart and hit the reset button and do all that stuff. So anyway, so now I'm in a better place. I'm in a good place. I can take care of all these snakes, and you know, have time for all this stuff like YouTube and life and things like that. So, and I have the room for it. So that's always good. Other mistake, and this goes back to the one I did about be careful who you get snakes from, is not having a quarantine procedure for my snakes. and that caused me a lot of problems too. Because remember when I said that I had bought some snakes that were sick? Well, I didn't quarantine those snakes, so I brought them into my collection. And then they got other snakes that I had sick, and so that got more expensive, and you know, it was really stressful. Here I have a room down the hall that I have a little rack in there, and so that's the quarantine rack area, whatever you want to call it. So so yeah, I mean, I remember I ended up with a respiratory infection that I brought in from a few snakes that I bought. I ended up with mites from a few snakes that I brought, and they went into my whole collection. And if you guys have ever had mites, you know that's a big pain in the butt. Just wanted you to know the mistakes that I made. Again, these might not be mistakes that other people made before and here. They're pretty similar. So hopefully you take some of this advice if you're thinking about starting a snake breeding. Just keep an eye out for those. If you're already doing it and you've made these mistakes, just know that it happens to everyone. And as long as you fix them, I've learned so much. I still learn. I learn from each one of you. Just keep researching, keep researching. You can never be too old. You can never think you know too much. Just because something's been done for years and years and years a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. And there's always new ways to think about things, so be open to that. So anyway, there you go, guys. Just some tips of what not to do. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Have a good day.